disparity of what's going on in the education. You know, there's good charter schools, there's bad charter schools. There is. There's no two if-and ways about it. There's no transparency. I trust my local neighbors that are on the school board. Charter schools don't have a school board. They're using our money. No, they're not. They don't have elected school boards from the community. I'm sorry. No, I was answering this question. I'm sorry. But what it is that if you actually do have some type of overseeing of our tax dollars and how they're spent on our education, you will see the benefits and the growth. Right now, I'll go back to Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, because the neatest thing I do in my little life is I'm a Cub Scout leader. My boys are 6 to 12 years of age. Start them out, you used to be able to just start right in, right after school, get them doing their programs. Now I have to make them run around the schools 6 times before they can calm down. Why? Because of the cut to the education. They have gym now Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 1 week, Tuesday, and Thursday. Why is that? Because in our communities, we have to share special ed, or we have to share phys ed teachers. That's not right. We have to share great reading recovery programs that help out with teaching and educating our kids to read when they're in the 3rd grade. Those are being cut out. We have to get back to the core beliefs. We have to get back to putting money in to public education. I don't believe it's right that we make money off of our kids and our schools. We need to get some transparency.
And education is the most important thing there is. It's a ticket to economic and political freedom. And I agree with Senator Robertson that no matter who's in the governor's office, that will always be a priority in the state of Michigan. I believe, of course, in free enterprise. So not that things aren't perfect, but I believe in competition. And I believe charter schools will create that. You know, competition just creates a higher standard of excellence, and we should all be able to compete. And what I find with a lot of the schools is they don't believe, I don't know if they think they can't compete, but they can, and they can do it well, and it would make them all better. And then we hear people say that we want to tweak Proposal A. Well, my attitude is don't touch Proposal A, because if they had not put Proposal A in 1993, there would be a lot of us who have lost our house. I probably lost my farm. Remember when those home values were going up 20, 30% a year? Well, your taxes were going up that much. Now at least there's a cap on them. So I would say, don't touch Proposal A, and you know, find some other ways to make improvements in the system. But I think we pay a lot in property taxes.
Yeah, the question is how do you plan to address the disparity of school funding? I was thinking the charter in there, but there is a disparity of school funding, and all the schools within the 51st district are base funded, including Holly, with the exception of one, Lake Fenton, that's a little higher than base. Every budget we have passed since I've been in the House has tried to address that. Last year, for example, Holly received $70 per student increase funding. All the base level schools was in that area. There was a little formula, so it varied school to school. Some of the higher schools, let's say Bluefield Hills, received $5 increase because they're well above the base funding. I think that's the right thing to do. This was created, you know, back when they did Proposal A, the formulas that were allowed for schools. Some schools were allowed to keep more than others, and the base funded schools did not get it. Holly, for example, got 71. They got $70 last calendar year for performance because they do a good job. They got $52 per student increase because they follow best practices, which ensures the money's going into the classroom, which most taxpayers really want to happen. And so this year, how they got additional $175 per student increase. I don't know what the performance or best practice, I don't have that with me today, but they got the $175 increase, and I think it's the right thing to do. All other schools above that receive $25. So every year, they're chipping away at it. I think that's the right thing to do. we're heading in the right direction. Charters get base funding.
Thanks, you've given me a lot to work with. I also studied public administration. That was one of my major fields when I was in my graduate school. And as part of that study, we looked at the privatization of what government does, government services. And some things are quite appropriate for privatizing. For instance, if you want to privatize the maintenance of your police vehicles or the maintenance of your fire vehicles or your elevators or the kinds of things that you could immediately tell when it didn't work. You know, if they came to fix the elevator and it didn't work, you know right away. You got to call the guys to come back and do it. How do you check on a privatized school to make sure it is meeting the needs? You can't. There are some things that just do not lend themselves to privatization. And I stand very much opposed to the privatization of our public schools. So I'm sorry, Mr. Hoffman, on this one I don't agree with you. I think I went to a meeting in Lansing about a month and a half ago when the superintendent of schools was presenting to the Senate Appropriations Committee and the House School Funding Committee a report on what was happening with schools across Michigan and those that were failing their economic responsibilities and those that were going to be able to maintain their budgets and meet what they had projected they could do. I have to tell you that 3 out of 4 of the schools in the state are very close to the edge of being in trouble. And the explanation that the superintendent gave to the committees was the very so-called school reforms that we have brought in place, the charter schools, the school choice, and the privatization of our schools, has caused unpredictability in school districts. Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry. It causes unpredictability for the school boards when they're making their budgets. They plan ahead and they think they'll have so many students coming in and they can plan their budgets for that number of students. But because of the way that we have structured school choice and the way that we're allowing privatization and charter schools to occur regarding competition, they can't succeed. We have built-in failure. We fund the building of our schools through our local villages and our taxes. We fund what happens in the classroom through what we get from the state. And if you look at the latest budget where the claim was made that there was a lot of money given back to the schools and the budget was so much bigger, I happen to know because I worked on a committee several years ago where the budget in my county had to bring in accountability for future obligations, and that's exactly what happened here. They're having to account for teachers' pensions, and that makes a big number.
Okay, starting with Mr. Kullis. Transfer of the Holly Police Dispatch to Oakland County due to lack of funding raised many concerns about public safety and services in the village. How will you as a council member work towards maintaining and improving public services going into the future?
You know, this is a good question to come out here. And I want to, it says the Holly Dispatch to Oakland County due to the lack of fundraising, many concerns about public safety and services. The most important thing regarding that question is misinformation. And we had a lot of that when we dealt with the dispatch issue. People came in public comment, they lined them up, they brought them in a smart bus, and they all said, I can't wait for an ambulance to come from Oakland County. It is so important to have the right information out there. One thing you need to notice tonight is there are 4 people running against us in this election. They're not here tonight. They don't want to have to answer your questions. That's what's important. The proper information has to get out. We took dispatch and we sent it over the county for a savings of about $115,000 to the village. We also sold some outdated equipment for $20,000, which is why you now have a ladder truck downtown. We also we drove down there and went through that dispatch office. I don't know how many people know this, but in Holly, when our dispatch needed a backup, they threw a switch, and guess who took the backup? Oakland County. It was an issue of safety. If you look at the numbers, they have improved since we've sent it over there. It's a person on a phone sending the same officers in Holly to the same addresses in Holly. The dispatcher doesn't give them directions. They don't tell them to turn left, turn right. It's our officers that get to your house. And it's so important that the proper information get out to the community and to the residents when these decisions are made.
I have a short answer.
I don't do short answers, sorry.
Keep Holly Police in Holly, the fire department in Holly, keep the ambulance in Holly, no matter what, whatever it takes, the end.
I'm glad Mr. Kullis brought up his point about misinformation in that, because as I was reading the question, due to lack of funding, and even the question itself is a little questionable, and this also speaks to the question about pressure of making tough decisions. A couple years ago when the village council was looking at having to slash budget, or there was a funding shortfall and they had to look at what to cut in the budget, it was said time and again by one council member or another that, well, we have to make some tough decisions. Well, to tell the truth, when you don't have enough money in your budget and you have to cut because state law requires villages to have a balanced budget, that's not a really tough decision. It's just a matter of what it's going to be. The tough decisions are when you look forward or you look in the big picture and you see something coming on the horizon and you know it won't be popular, but you make the decision because you know it's the right thing, not because your hand is forced, but because it's the right thing to do and it's the right direction to go. Those are the tough decisions. As we look forward to the future of the village in terms of the services and what we provide, we have to be looking long-term and we have to be looking big picture. We can't, the dispatch, we outsourced the dispatch because we saw what was coming on the horizon. It was not feasible to maintain, and at the end of the day, we got better service at a lower cost. So that philosophy is what's going to drive every service decision we have from the police and the ambulance. Where are we getting the best service for the community, the best value for the taxpayer dollars that are going into it? Along with that, one of the things that this council has done better than any that I've seen since I've lived here is working with the administration and asking the questions, how can we make this work the best? How can we make our water system more efficient? How can we make our billing system? How can we look at police and fire and everything? How can we improve that? How can we make this the most cost efficient for the taxpayers? Those are always the first questions. And then when we look at that, we say, what's the plan? There's no better way to see that with the community center. When the proposal of not just moving the village offices here, but also establishing a community center came to the council, said, what's your plan? And the reason we said that wasn't because we wanted to put anybody on the spot. It's because as the stewards of taxpayer dollars, we wanted to know that this is going to be a viable investment for the future, well after any of us are on council. So those are the kind of things that we're going to look at, whether you're talking about police or EMS or public services or our parks or anything, is what's the best value, what's the big picture plan going forward to make sure that we're making the best decisions.